Hello, Chicago. Welcome on in episode of Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Well, it's here. We have a name. We have a guy. We have a coach. Shane Waldron is your new offensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears. What does this mean for the offense? What are his qualifications? Was this a good hire? What does this mean for the QB1 debate? We will discuss all that plus more on the move for the Bears. Elsewhere, we had other coaching moves going on in the city today. In the college ranks, DePaul men's hoops fired their head coach today after 2+ seasons. They will now yet again be on the lookout for a new coach. What can be done to turn DePaul around? And we'll also look at some of the other teams around the city as far as college hoops are concerned. And finally, the Chicago White Sox have it in their heads that they're going to build a new stadium in the city. Have they picked a good spot? All that and more coming up right damn now. Hello and good evening, everyone. I am your host, Adam Karnick. Glad that you are here with me. Hope you're having a wonderful Monday evening. Hope you enjoyed the weekend. There was some good football, more snow, more stuff to take care of. Hopefully you were able to comfortably do whatever it was you needed to do. I was able actually to get out with my daughter and actually have some fun in all the snow this weekend. That was kind of a fun thing to get to do that a little bit. But hopefully you guys had a great weekend, and now we're ready to dive into the week. And finally, we get some breaking news on a Monday so we can actually dissect it when it's fresh and brand new instead of news breaking on a Tuesday and I have to wait all the way till the following Monday. So, of course, you know where we're going to be starting with this show. But before we get too much further, we do, of course, want to acknowledge that this show and all shows on IE Sports Radio, of course, are brought to you and presented by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, the Class A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. This is some of the best jerky you can get your hands on. I've got a couple of bags upstairs in my pantry right now, as a matter of fact, and been enjoying that and snacking on that here the last week. Go to planetjerky.net to place your order. They are offering free shipping on all orders of $50 and above, and regardless of what your taste preferences are, if you need to keep it nice and mild, just some good savory, good jerky in there, the smoke and BBQ style. If you want to crank it all the way up to 11, though, they've got the Carolina Reaper that is going to just burn your taste buds right there, and flavors in between. There will be something for you. And I like the packaging too. On the back of the packaging, they give you information about some of the different planets in the solar system, about the planets themselves and how they got their names. So some educational material on there too. once again, a big shout out to our sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet. For the last 9.5 years now, IE Sports Radio has brought you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Be sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok to keep up with the latest in sports and with our shows. You can also check out our daily updated website, iesportsradio.com, for sports news, the IE Sports Radio blog, our Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month, and pages dedicated to each of our podcasts, our IE Sports Radio community forum, and of course, stop by the shop and check out the merchandise. Thank you for making IE Sports Radio a direct feed for all that is sports. And you heard in there the way that you can follow along with our show, with our network. You can also follow along. This show is available for you on Twitter. We are at IESRC. That's how you follow along with this show. Or you can follow along with me personally. I am at Adam_Karnick. And if you are listening live here on this Monday evening, hop on into the chat room. It's already hopping in there. Good evening, Davidson, Taryn, Drewski, Ralph. Good evening, everybody. Hope you're all having a wonderful, wonderful Monday evening. Or if you're listening later on in the week as a podcast, whether it's on Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, or right here on Spreaker, wherever it is that you're finding our content, thank you for making this part of your week. I really do appreciate it. So, of course, the huge news of the day, the Bears have hired an offensive coordinator. Reportedly, it's not official yet, but Shane Waldron reportedly is taking over the position. This was the first guy that the Bears interviewed. They had a long list. They had about 8, 9, 10 guys that they had brought in for interviews. And Waldron was the very first one, and he reportedly winds up being the guy that they wound up settling on. So who exactly is, before, of course, what everybody wants to know right out of the gate is, what does this mean for the quarterback controversy? We'll get to that. But before we can really understand how we're going to arrive at that answer, let's look at Coach Waldron just a little bit. Who is this guy? Who is this person? What does he bring to the table? What does this mean for the Bears offense going forward? Well, first of all, Waldron, he most immediately comes over from Seattle. He's a young guy. He's 44 years old. He'll turn 45 right before the start of the season. He'll turn 45 this preseason, this August. He'll turn 45 years old. He's bounced around a little bit. Most recently, as I mentioned, he's been the offensive coordinator in Seattle each of the last 2 seasons. And he called plays while he was there. That's a big difference between Luke Getsy, who the Bears, of course, had at offensive coordinator most recently. Waldron was the play caller for Seattle the last couple of seasons. So he has experience with play calling. He's also, before being the offensive coordinator in Seattle, he spent 4 seasons with the Los Angeles Rams. He started there. Sorry, I was trying to get my full list pulled up that I had from earlier today. I apologize. It's not the same link isn't coming up. But we'll go this route then. This is another one that I know had everything. He was the passing game coordinator with Los Angeles for 3 years, as well as he served as their quarterback coach, and he was also under Sean McVay. He also worked as one of the as another one of the position assistants with the Rams. He was the tight ends coach. There we go. I apologize. He was the tight ends coach first for Los Angeles. Then he was promoted to passing game coordinator and quarterbacks coach. That was a position he held for 3 seasons with the Rams. Before that, he had spent 1 season with the Washington Commanders as a quality control assistant, an offensive quality control assistant. He has spent time in the collegiate ranks at University of Massachusetts. He also spent 1 year in the United Football League, and then he broke into the NFL as an offensive, both an intern and a quality control coach on the offensive side with the New England Patriots. So he's spent time with Bill Belichick. He has spent time with Sean McVay. He has spent time with Pete Carroll before coming here to Chicago. His offensive course is going to be West Coast, and it's going to be an offshoot. Obviously, the time with McVay there is the big piece of the puzzle there. The 4 years spent with Sean McVay with the Los Angeles Rams. His version of West Coast is going to be off of the McVay branch of the West Coast tree, which comes ultimately from Kyle Shanahan and Mike Shanahan. So it's kind of that shit. So it's a version of the Shanahan version of the West Coast offense, which is not that different from what they had with Luke Getsy. I think the biggest difference here with Waldron, and this is the part that's obviously going to excite Bears fans the most, is that Shane Waldron has called plays before. Each of the last 2 years, he called plays with Seattle. And of course, that's also included in that, of course, is Geno Smith, the Geno Smith discussion. Geno Smith, when Waldron first got there to Seattle, it was to help Russell Wilson, and he got to work 1 season with Russell Wilson. Then they had the trade, and Geno Smith took over. And Geno Smith, as we all remember, he was a very unheralded, not super well thought of quarterback that suddenly then the first year under Shane Waldron throws for over 4,000 yards, completed nearly 70% of his passes, made the Pro Bowl, got the Seahawks to the playoffs. So that makes you excited with this hire of Shane Waldron. So what does this mean for? So we know that, all right, this is going to be yet again. This is going to be West Coast offense. This is going to be not that different from a scheme that the Bears have run the last couple of seasons. So what does that mean for the quarterback situation? On the surface, you would think that would point you in the direction of Justin Fields, that, hey, this could be great for Justin Fields, and it can. But ultimately, I don't think that this really does anything to move the quarterback debate needle one way or the other, even though there are lots of people online that have instantly jumped to honestly both conclusions, that this hiring of Waldron is a surefire sign that Fields is safe, that Fields is going to be their guy. They're going to auction off the number 1 pick and get 75 million draft picks in return and whatever they want, and draft every other player that's ever existed in the history of the NFL draft. Amen. That's one side. On the other side, people are using the exact same hiring to say, see, they're going Caleb Williams. They're going to get whatever they can for Justin Fields in a trade. They're going Caleb Williams, and they're going all out with the new kid. They're starting over fresh at the quarterback. And honestly, either one could be true. This hiring really doesn't do anything for me in that debate, and here's why. As I mentioned, you're running virtually the same offense. Obviously, some of the terminology, some of the phraseology might be different, so the players might have to learn some slightly new terms, some slightly new languages, have some subtle differences, but ultimately the concepts, the principles of the offense are going to be the same. So that should help Justin Fields immensely. He's not having to learn new concepts. He's not having to learn too much new. He's just going to have to substitute this word for that word. At the same time, though, Waldron, along with a lot of other McVay assistants over the last couple of years, have run a quarterback camp for high-end collegiate quarterbacks with the ultimate goal of helping to prepare them to make the jump to the NFL. Shane Waldron has worked at this camp, and he's worked with Caleb Williams. He has a rapport with Caleb Williams. So he has an opinion on Caleb Williams already somewhat set up. So which direction does this go? It honestly, it doesn't move the needle. You know, of the 8 guys that the Bears brought up, there were really only 2 names that were going to move the needle one way or the other. Had they hired Greg Roman, that would have made you feel. And good evening to Mike Patton, Wesley Truba jumping into the chat room. Good evening, gentlemen. We're talking Bears as we get going here early. The big news, of course, is the reported signing of Shane Waldron to be the new offensive coordinator. There were really only 2 names on the list that I felt were going to move the needle at all as far as the quarterback debate. Had the Bears hired Greg Roman, that would have been, they are sticking with Justin Fields. They are looking at this as, we have Lamar Jackson 2.0. Greg Roman worked for forever with Lamar Jackson. We want to tap into that, and that's the direction we're going to go. That would have been a very pro-Fields hire. The other one, on the far polar end, the other extreme, was Cliff Kingsbury, who his name got announced. I'm trying to remember if it was announced by the time we went on air last week or not. I think it was. Yeah, because I think we talked about it last week. So it had to have been. And Kingsbury, of course, has been Caleb's offensive coordinator at USC this past season. And running an air raid offense that is different from the West Coast. Similar, but different in enough ways that you would go, you know, this guy's obviously, he's coached with Caleb for the last year. He's been in the NFL. You know what he's going to be. Yeah, they're going Caleb Williams if they bring in Cliff Kingsbury. All the other names were on the McVay, somewhere in that McVay, Shanahan, West Coast tree, to the point where it's similar to what they've been running, so that's clearly what they want to run. But these guys have also, because McVay has had this coaching camp for collegiate quarterbacks, there's a rapport there. There's stuff there with other quarterbacks that you could connect the dots to moving on. So I don't know that this necessarily moves the needle one way or the other on the endless quarterback debate. And it's that debate's not going anywhere. We're going to be hearing this debate for the next 3 months, Bears fans. Hold on, buckle up. Just sink your teeth in, because that's what it's going to be. That's what it's going to be for the next few months. We're going to be having this debate. So I don't know that it necessarily moves the needle one way or the other. But I think, in Kingsbury worked with Patrick. Oh, yeah. Patrick Mahomes in the air raid offense down in Texas. Oh, yeah. That's a huge feather in Kingsbury's cap. I honestly feel like this was probably the never-ending quarterback debate. Ah, yes. Familiar territory. What do you do about a quarterback? If only there were, good ones to be had everywhere. I honestly feel like this certainly felt like the most obvious move for the Bears to make. And I think what it showed also, that what this hire showed, is that Poles and Eberflus, they clearly have a template. They have a prototype in mind of what an offensive coordinator is supposed to look like. He's supposed to come somewhere from the West Coast offensive tree, somewhere from that. They want him to be young, and they want him to be a teacher. Eberflus kept bringing up time and again in the press conference about the importance of being a teacher. I could argue the necessity of that at the professional level, but it certainly isn't a bad trait to have in a coach. You need to be able to instruct. You need to be able, at the very least, you need to be able to communicate quickly, succinctly, easily, and across multiple ways, which are all things that teachers have to do also. So it certainly isn't a bad trait to have. And as Wes points out, yes, this should be a fairly smooth transition to a new offensive coordinator. So that's another reason why this felt like it felt like a very obvious and safe move for the Bears. How great of a move is it? You look at the offensive rankings for this past season for the Seahawks compared to the Bears, they're not that different. I'm gonna pull up the actual leaderboard here. The Bears and Seahawks were actually right next to each other as far as yards per game. The Bears offense actually averaged more yards per game than the Seahawks. It was 0.3 of a yard more. 323.2 as opposed to 322.9. Not a huge difference there. There were 11 teams that ranked behind Seattle, and then the Bears were one in front of the Seahawks. So do that math in your head. Both of them were bottom third in the league as far as yards per game. Passing yards per game, Seattle was better than Chicago. I mean, Chicago was 27th in the league in passing yards per game. Seattle, as I find them in the list here, was more middle of the pack. They were right in the middle of the pack. They were 16th as far as passing yards per game. 230 passing yards per game for Seattle as opposed to 182.1 for Chicago. Points per game. Chicago was 21.2 points a game. Seattle was right in front of them at 21.4 points per game. So from a statistical standpoint, the Bears offense and the Seahawks offense weren't. It's not like the Seahawks offense was light years ahead of the Bears offense in your obvious categories. Yards per game, points per game. You know, they were literally right next to each other. The Bears were 18 in points per game. The Seahawks were 17. And you can, of course, you can come up with reasons for that offensive line injuries, or in the Bears' case, lack of playmakers outside of DJ Moore and Cole Kmet. Seattle, their wide receiver core is certainly better as a whole than the Bears' wide receiving core, so you can take that for however you want to mix it together. To me, the part that I like about this is that it should be as smooth and as easy of a transition as possible to the next guy. Hopefully the next guy is here for more than a year. Because that's the other side of this, of course, is, you know, and that's another feather in Waldron's cap, is he's been an offensive coordinator for a defensive-minded head coach. Pete Carroll obviously doesn't run a cover two. You know, he's not running a Tampa 2 defense, but he's a defensive-minded head coach. And Waldron has been his offensive coordinator the last couple of years. He's got play calling experience. He's elevated. Say what you will about the need for a terrific quarterback. Waldron has elevated Geno Smith's quarterback play. He elevates quarterback play, which is a huge deal. He gets the most out of his quarterbacks. So you like that out of him. Overall, what does this mean for the offense as a whole? What does this mean at the quarterback position? We're going to have to wait and see. I don't know that this gives us any clarity at all on the quarterback position, but we at least have a guy now, and now they can start to work to fill out some of the rest of the staff. They now can worry about finding a defensive coordinator. There was a name that came out over the weekend that I loved seeing and hearing at the defensive coordinator. One Chris Harris, former Bears safety Chris Harris, who has been most recently with the Carolina Panthers coaching staff. The Bears are interviewing him for their defensive coordinator position. And the Bears aren't the only one. I believe the Jaguars are interviewing him for the same position on their staff. Chris Harris was a Pro Bowl safety playing this system that a version of this system that the Bears now are employing. So you know that he understands it and he knows it well. I think that would be a wonderful hire. He spent some time. He's spent some time with the Bears on their coaching staff as a quality control assistant before moving on to other things. I would love the move. I think that'd be a terrific hire for the Bears. I'm curious to see what other names pop up, but so far I like the first move. Mike Pat brings up here in the chat room, the Washington Commanders could trade for Justin Fields and then move back in the draft and try to build the O-line. So I see that you saw that it was someone on Twitter was suggesting it. Did they list a pick? Did they list what compensation they'd be offering for Fields? Because I have a number in mind. I have a price in mind that I think is reasonable, but I'm curious what other people are throwing out there. So, Mike, throw that at me in the chat if they had listed what the compensation was in that. We can keep that going in the chat. The Bears weren't the only ones making coaching moves in the city today. We had in the collegiate ranks, the DePaul men's basketball team is once again going to be looking for a new head coach as they decided to move on after a rough start to the season. We will discuss that, plus take a look around some of the other college happenings going on in the city. On the other side of this break, you are listening to Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Be right back after this.
Hello, sports fans. It's me, your boy Larry B, and I want to walk you through the world of sports. No, not just the mainstream major TV deal type sports, although those are important too. But let me be your guide through your journey of all sports, from college to the pros, the minors, and everything in between. Each week, we are talking sports galore with true diehards just like you from a hardcore fan's perspective that's sure to quench your thirst around leagues you may know all too well and some you may even discover here. That's right, sports fans. If you love sports of all kinds, enjoy hearing amazing sports stories, and respect all sports because you know how difficult any of them can be to play or compete in, then this is your show. Join me, your boy Larry B, on the defining moment each week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and let the sports come to you.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IU Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up? It's your man Bishop, the voice of This Is KC Sports, the show where we go over the Chiefs, the Royals, KC Current, Sporting KC, MU, and oh yeah, If we got time, we'll even throw in some of that KU stuff from my people on the 913 South. Come and hang out with us every Sunday, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Dentarius Lava.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That gives you guys spending time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter, at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter. At any time, be happy to reply. Always want to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back into Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. So a little bit of conversation going on here in the chat during the break. So Mike Pat had brought up right before the break there that the Commanders should trade for Justin Fields. And the way this trade broke down was the Commanders would send, of course, they have multiple second-round picks because the Bears gave the one for Montez Sweat. So they would send one of their second-round picks, a conditional pick in 2025, and defensive tackle Jonathan Allen. Now, Jonathan Allen is under contract for 2 more years. That is an interesting trade. I kind of, and all the Bears would have to send would be Justin Fields. Obviously, this would be predicated upon the idea that the Bears are thinking they're going to take Caleb Williams. And right now, I'm leaning towards that's what I think the Bears would do. I don't hate that trade. That seems like more than fair compensation for Fields. Taryn then brings up a trade that I've seen many versions of, where it's the Vegas Raiders send a combination of picks plus defensive end Max Crosby to the Bears for the Bears' number 1 overall pick. I actually floated a version of that to Cale during Sin City. You may have heard the last drop there. Cale Henderson is the host of our Las Vegas show, Sin City Sports, on Tuesday nights, 9 o'clock, right here on IE Sports Radio. I actually floated a version of that to him, and he very good-naturedly, we had a lot of fun with it, but he literally laughed it off. He thought it was utterly ridiculous and way too much for the number 1 overall pick. He said if it were just the draft picks, he felt that would be adequate compensation, but throwing Crosby in there, he felt crossed the line, that it was too much. I think the exact trade that I floated his way, which was one of the versions I saw, was their first rounder and second rounder this year, their first rounder next year, and Max Crosby to move up from 7 to 1. And Cale literally laughed it off. It's a lot, and it's because you have Caleb Williams, who is being projected as not only the number 1 overall pick of this year's draft, but the number 1 overall pick of potentially the last 10 or 12 drafts, potentially. That's how highly he's thought of in the scouting community and the draft community. I've seen one guy go so far as Caleb Williams is the best prospect since Peyton Manning back in 98. So that's how highly some people are viewing Williams. So that trade with Washington, though, for Fields, I don't think that's bad compensation at all. That is, the big thing is the Bears. I feel like the Bears need to somehow. I would love to see the Bears acquire a second-round pick this year. Because, yes, they have 2 in the top 10 this year, but after that, their next one doesn't come until 75 in the third round. Or it might even be 76. I'd have to look it up to know specifically. But they have 2 picks in the top 10, but they also only have 2 picks in the top 70. They might only have 2 picks in the top 75. Their third pick might be at 76, 77, somewhere in there. So to get back into the second round somehow, not that the Montez Sweat deal, you're very welcome, Mike. I was about to bring up actually that I was very skeptical of that trade when they made it, but since then, my goodness, Montez Sweat was such a monster for the Bears over the final 2 months of the regular season. He wound up leading both the Commanders and the Bears in sacks simultaneously. That was a tremendous performance from him. He really helped give the defense some teeth, and that was very sorely needed. Very sorely needed. All right, I teased it right before the break, so I should absolutely pay this off. There was another big coaching move that came in the city today. DePaul fired their head men's basketball coach, Tony Stubblefield, this afternoon. Coach Stubblefield was in his 3rd season with the team. And just frankly, it's performance. His best season was his first season when they went 15-16 overall. Then last year they went 10-23, and included in that was losing their last 12. They were 10-11 heading into the peak run of the season. And then they dropped their final 12 games to go 10-23, including just 3-17 in the Big East. And then this season, they get off to just a 3-15 start, including 0-7 in the Big East. So Coach Stubblefield, he leaves having finished 18 and 46 overall. They are dead last in the Big East right now. They're winless in the Big East, just 3-15 overall. And their last win, they haven't won a game yet this calendar year. Their last win came on December 30th against Chicago State. You know, they are struggling. You know, you look at where they're at. I'm trying to pull up a more complete list of their stats here, but they're just struggling as they sit here right now. They are not doing well. You know, their leading scorer is averaging just over 11 points a game. That's Chico Carter Jr. is getting just under 12 a game. Deshaun Nelson is getting basically 11.5 a game. They are struggling as a team. And it's a shame because DePaul for a long time, you know, it's getting many, many, many years ago, almost about as long as when the Bears were last really, truly great, is about the last time DePaul basketball was truly great. And I'm not sure how they get back there. I'm really not sure what they have to do to get back there. It's been so long since DePaul has been really truly relevant, but it would be excellent for the city. Chicago is has such a wonderful basketball tradition and base at the prep level. Some of the best basketball players have come out of Chicago. They have a terrific prep history. It just has not been able to translate into success at the collegiate level, whether it's been with DePaul or whether it's been with Northwestern or whether it's been with Illinois, you know, or with Loyola or whomever. It just hasn't really translated. For a while it was DePaul. But, you know, you're going back about 30 plus years ago now is really when DePaul was really good. I'm not sure what they do to fix it, but they've got to figure something out there and try to right this ship a little bit. Let's also take this opportunity a little bit here and just kind of peek around the men's basketball board a little bit here. We did this a little bit during college football season, but I want to do this a little bit now, you know, during basketball season a little bit. Let's start with the Atlantic 10 because, of course, that's where Loyola Chicago, the Ramblers, are. They are currently third in the Atlantic 10. They're 13-6 overall, 5-1 in conference play. They lost to Richmond. That's their only conference loss. They play number 16th ranked Dayton at the very end of the regular season. So they are very much in control of their destiny there with the A10 sitting at third overall. They just came off of They just came off of a win over the weekend. They went out east and took on Fordham, won that game 65-61. They are on a nice little 3-game losing streak after dropping the game to Richmond, which that was a couple weeks ago. That was only just a 2-point loss. That was a close game. Now, it was not quite as close as 2 points would make you believe. Richmond had a little bit of a lead there at the end that they were able to hold on. But still, that was a competitive game throughout. Loyola did lead in that one as late as 7 minutes left to go in the game. They did have a lead in that one, so they were very much in it there with Richmond. So Loyola doing very well there in the Atlantic 10. Over, of course, in the Big Ten right now, Illinois, ranked 10th in the country, is currently 3rd in the Big Ten, 14-4 overall, 5-2 in the conference. They're on a 2-game winning streak. As we sit here right now. They took on Rutgers over the weekend, won that one very comfortably. They also had wins over Michigan, Maryland, and Michigan State recently, though they did drop their game against number 1 overall Purdue. Illinois also did here recently, right at the beginning of the calendar year, they took on Northwestern and won that game very comfortably by 30 points to comfortably win that one. They've got another rematch with Northwestern. That one's at Northwestern coming up later this week. That'll be Wednesday night. Illinois against Northwestern. Then they'll be home against Indiana a little later this week, and then they finish out this month out at Ohio State next week. That is a week from tomorrow. So next Tuesday night, they will be in Columbus taking on that one. Northwestern, then, on the other hand, they are right behind Illinois. They're 13-5 overall, 4-3 in the Big Ten. I mentioned that loss to Illinois. Since that one, they beat Michigan State. They handled Penn State. They did lose at Wisconsin, but then they handled Maryland. A disappointing loss over the weekend, though. They dropped 1-2 Nebraska. That was a tough one. They're losing by 6 against Nebraska. That's one you really would have liked to have seen Northwestern win that one. That one to me that's a disappointing loss. That's a tough loss. That's not one you'd like to see them. Not like to see them drop. Not like to see them drop that game. And Taryn brought up in the chat earlier, and of course, Taryn is the host of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, keeping you up to date on everything volleyball. Taryn, is Set Point now permanently going to be earlier in the day on Mondays, or is that a temporary thing? Taryn used to be immediately following us on Monday nights, and so it was very easy for me. I would just get done and then tune over and listen to him, but he's been earlier in the day now on Mondays. Is that a permanent switch, Taryn, or is that a temporary? If you're able to pop into the chat real quick. He brought up that the Ramblers are ranked in the nation. They are 13th. They are 13th overall. They had themselves a good weekend. They beat Kentucky State and Merrimack, and then they get to play LIU over this coming weekend to try to stay ranked and stay relevant there in the men's volleyball. So good things happening there for the Ramblers overall. And it is a temporary. He will be back to his more regular time. Looks like the beginning of February he'll be back to his regular time. So So follow him on Twitter follow IE Sports Radio on Twitter for the updated times for him temporarily. But it looks like back in February, once we get to February, he'll be back to his normal time. All right, we are going to take just a fast little break, and then I have one more story for us before we get out of here and call it a night. Another Bears story we've been talking about for the last year plus is their never-ending hunt for a new stadium. It came out last week that the Bears are not the only ones now potentially looking at moving. The Chicago White Sox might be having a new home soon. We will discuss that on the flip side here of a short break. You are listening to Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Well, what is up, Carolina Nation? This is John Felipe of the Carolina Cast, of course, the podcast of, by, and for the Carolinas, right here on IE Sports, your direct feed for all that is sports. And I'm reminding you to tune in Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern for the latest in Carolina sports, whether it's the Panthers that keep on pounding, the fly natures of the Hornets, the storming Hurricanes, the battle of the Blues with Duke and UNC, the fight of the Clemson Tigers, or the amazing atmosphere of any Carolina college. I'm talking App State, I'm talking ECU. I've got you covered. Once again, tune in for the Carolina Cast with me, John Felipe, Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
It's IE Sports Radio. It is your direct feed for all that is sports. It is Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris every Tuesday night right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris is the most comprehensive view on Philadelphia sports exclusively right here on IE Sports Radio. You know what it is, your direct feed for all that is sports. Tuesday night, IE Sports Radio, Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris.
And welcome back into Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Adam Karnick with you here for just a couple of more minutes before we wrap things up with the show tonight. Once again, I want to remind everybody that this show, along with all of our shows, is presented to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Go to planetjerky.net to place your order. Free shipping on all orders of $50 or above. The last story that I wanted to talk with everybody about tonight, there might be a new baseball stadium coming to Chicago here in the near future. The Chicago White Sox lease with guaranteed rate field is coming due here soon, and the White Sox might be moving. They have begun pursuing a plot of land. It's referred to sometimes as the 78. It is effectively, it's right on the south side of the Loop. I actually used to walk right past there when coming off of the South Shore train to pick up the Green Line just south of the Loop and take that up to campus when I was a college student. So I've walked in the area a little bit, and this isn't where this isn't where the ballpark would be, but the park I would always walk through. I always remember it had all the really tall, beheaded statues. It was a very strange park. Art can be I'm a musician. Art can be a wonderful thing. As I have gotten older, and I hesitate to say wiser because I'm still a Bears fan, but I guess we'll say more mature slightly. My wife would probably argue with the use of that word too. As I've gotten older, I guess we'll just leave it at that. I've at least kind of appreciated art a little bit more. That's still one that to me, I'm not sure what the artist was trying to say there by having these 8-foot tall legs, arms, and torsos with no heads. I don't know. Could be a great place to play hide and seek as a kid, I guess. Anyway, that's getting way off topic, way off track. But the new ballpark would be on the south side of the Loop. Still in Chicago. Still very much within city limits. It would be very easy to get to by mass transit. It would be arguably easier to get to than Guaranteed Rate Field is currently because of where they'd be putting it. But it's still it's an interesting spot trying to put it there basically between Clark and Roosevelt, between South Clark and Roosevelt, the 78 development. You're right there on the river. There were some artist renderings that were popping up that I saw that honestly, it felt very cramped. That was the feeling I got from looking at the artist renderings. The ballpark itself looked beautiful. It felt very cramped in there. And it could be because they decided to put some high rises and other buildings and things like that in the area that in the picture that those buildings don't currently exist. So that could be some of it too. But, looking at the 78 development as it sits right now, it's not like you're flush with parking opportunities. You would be very reliant upon your mass transit, upon your green line or your, it's Roosevelt. So everything in the Loop is going to go there at some point. So you can take your trains there. I've taken if you're coming in from outside the city, the South Shore line, my goodness, it's easy to get there from that way. It's exactly what you do if you're coming in for Soldier Field. If you're coming in from that area, it's actually kind of nice that way. If nothing else, please, White Sox, if you please do this, I have one request of you. Please, please, please orient the stadium in such a way that when you're looking out through the outfield, you see the city. That is my biggest complaint with Guaranteed Rate or U.S. Cellular or New Comiskey, whatever you want to call it. When they built it, they pointed it backwards. It was so stupid. You have the Chicago skyline right behind you. Just turn the stadium around. Instead, they decided to look out over the Dan Ryan. No one wants to be sitting in a ball game, looking out and seeing the expressway, seeing the highway. Nobody wants to see that, especially when you can see the Sears Tower and all of the Chicago skyline is right there for you, but you have the back of the stadium blocking your way. So if nothing else, White Sox, take the sight lines into account when you build this thing. That's all I got on that. All right. that is going to do it for our show here this evening. Once again, thank you to our sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet. I have 2 bags of volcanic jalapeno upstairs. One of them is definitely not full. I have been enjoying that over the last week. Thank you to Larry B. All the hard work you are doing behind the scenes, sir. And thank you for hopping into the chat room at the last minute. I appreciate that, sir. All the hard work you are doing behind the scenes, keeping us moving, keeping us going. Thank you to everybody that appeared in the chat room today. Taryn Rodriguez, Mike Hatt, Wesley Trueblood, Davidson Crooks, Ralph Calise, Drewski. Thank you, everybody, for being here in the chat room. I really do appreciate that. Finally, thank you for coming and listening. Whether it was live here tonight on Monday night or it was later on in the week as a podcast on Spotify or YouTube or iHeartRadio or Podcast Addict, any of the other places where you can find our content. Thank you for making this part of your week. Whether this was heavy sports, diving into the news, whether this was just being part of the conversation, maybe this was an escape for you. Whatever this was for you, thank you for being here. Thank you for making me part of your week. I really do appreciate that. Spread the love. Share this around with people. Let people know, hey, this is something I listen to. I think you'd enjoy this. That would mean a ton to me. So, but just you coming back and listening every week, I am very appreciative. Thank you very much. Next week, we're going to know who's in the Super Bowl. Might the Lions make it? Could the Bears have actually beaten one of the teams that made the Super Bowl? We'll find out. Until then, have a good week, everybody.